Once again, we are back with factoring trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, but with a twist. A no longer equals 1, and we are going to use the reverse FOIL method. So the steps for this is factoring out the greatest common factor if one exists, finding two terms whose product is ax squared, find two last terms whose product is c, and then find a combination for which the sum of the outer and inner products is bx. This is not something that's magically going to happen. You have to practice recognizing factors of numbers. That is the truth. You must practice these. They're fun when you get the pattern down, not so much when you don't get the pattern yet. So, fair warning, this is not something you can cram for. You have to practice this. So let's try with the first question. This is factoring a trinomial expression, 3x squared minus 16x minus 12. There is no common factor here, so I'm going to go straight to my next step, which is trying to figure out two terms that would multiply to 3x squared. I know that 3x and x would give me a 3x squared. Now I have to pick a 12 as a product and a sum of 16. This is where it gets tricky because you no longer just have an x in the first term, but it's not the end of the world. Pick 3 and 4 and see what happens. If you do FOIL, the outer and the inner are your like terms in the middle. So, will 9 and 4 give you a 16? Nope. So let's try rearranging them. Let's try 4 and 3. That will give you 12 plus 3. That does not appear to be working. You cannot give up on your first try because that's not how this stuff works. So let's try something else. We had 2 and 6. And so we could try 3 times 6, that's 18. And then we could try 2. 2 and 18. That will give us a difference of 16. So let's make the 6 negative and the 2 positive. And we're done. Let's try the next one. We have 12a squared minus 4a minus 16. There is definitely a common factor of 4 in there. So I'll factor that out and I'll have 4 times 3a squared minus a minus 4. And then I'll factor the trinomial. I know I'll have a 3a and an a. And then I need a number that will multiply to 4 and add to negative 3. But don't forget about this negative 1. This 3 is going to affect the outer and the inner, not the inner, just the outer. So 3 and 4. 3 and 4. Well, I know 4 times 1 will give me 4. And I know 2 times 2 will give me 4. So let's try 1 and 4. This will give me 3 on the outside, 4 on the inside. So as long as 4 is negative and 1 is positive, I will have the correct middle term of negative a. That works. Let's try the next one. We have 6x squared minus 5x minus 25. And so I'm checking for common factors and there aren't any, so I'm going to move on to factorization. I need something that multiplies to 6x squared, so I'm going to try 3x and 2x. Notice that I always break the letters apart into two separate terms. That's a pretty common trick. I'm going to try 5 and 5 because I know that I need something that will give me 25 at the end. And so now it's just a matter of figuring out which 5 should be positive and which 5 should be negative. Well, if I have 3x times 5, that will give me 15. And 2x times 5 will give me 10. So I need the bigger product to be negative, which will be this second 5. Now if I look at 70x to the fourth minus 68x to the third plus 16x to the second, I clearly have an x squared as a common factor. And it looks like possibly a 2 as well. So let's factor that out. That will give me a 35x squared minus 34x plus 8. There we go. So now we need to factor that trinomial. Drop your common factor out front. 35 is 5 times 7, and x. And then I need to figure out how I'm going to break up the 8. A good kind of starting point is to get 8 to have factors as close together as possible. So don't start with 1 and 8 unless your numbers in your trinomial are extremely far apart from each other. And so I'm going to try 4 and 2. I'm just trying it. It might be wrong, and then I'll change it. 5 times 4 is 20, and 2 times 7 is 14. If they're both negative terms, then that will work. Because a negative times a negative will give me a positive 8. And negative 14x plus negative 20x will give me negative 34x. So that one works. Go ahead and pause the video if you think you're starting to see a pattern, and give the last two a try. Welcome back. Let's see what you got. So there's a 35y to the second plus 34y plus 8. I don't see a common factor, so we're going to move on to trying to factor them into binomials. Let's try 5y and 7y. And let's try 4 and 2 for my 8, my last term. If I multiply the outer and the inner, I'll have 10y and 28. So that won't work, because that would give me 38, and I don't want that. I'm going to try rearranging this. So instead of my 4 and my 2 being in that order, let's try 2 and 4 the other direction. This would give me 20 and 14. So 20y and 14y does indeed work. All my terms are positive in the trinomial, so I know my binomials will also have positive signs. Last one. I see I have a common factor of at least 3, so I'm going to factor out a 3, an x, and a y. When I do that, I might find another factor, but for now I'm just going to start there. This will be 21x squared plus 37x plus 12, and now I can check again. It doesn't look like there's another common factor, so now I'm just going to try and factor the trinomial. Don't forget to drop your GCF down. 21x squared is 3x and 7x, and then I need to figure out how I'm going to rearrange the 12. I could either try 2 times 6 or 3 times 4. And either one might work. So let's try 3 here. Notice that there's a common factor if I put 3 there. So I'm going to go ahead and not do that because that won't work. Let's try 2 and 6. So 3 times 6 is 18. And 2 times 7 is 14. And if I add those together, I get 32. So that does not work. Let's try something else. Let's try 4 and 3. So 3 times 3 would be 9, and 4 times 7 would be 28. And there is our answer. So I will replace the 2 and the 6 with 4 and 3. So hopefully that helps you see my process. This takes practice. Don't wait till the last minute to do this.